Good morning, welcome to this weekly market update from MRC Markets in London. Today is the 8th of October 2012. What we'll do today is go through some technical analysis on Euro dollar, cable, dollar Swiss, Aussie dollar and gold. Do some sort of review from last week. Won't dwell too much on last week. Mainly have a look at this week's calendar and the charts for this week, just trying to give some sort of outlook into the markets going into the week. We're not making any trade calls or recommendations in this video. Trade at your own risk. If you could please read our full disclaimer on our website www.mrcmarkets.com. For any new followers, we have 3 moving averages on each of these charts. The red one is a 55 simple moving average, the purple is 100 simple, and the gold is a 200 simple moving average. Okay, let's go straight to the charts. This is the Euro dollar weekly. First of all, let's just take a look at last week's candle. As you can see, bullish engulfing, but we did have a bit of upper wick, and also you can notice we posted it on Twitter as well on our at MRC_markets Twitter feed, that Euro dollar is testing this 55-week moving average, and you can see on last week's candle, if you really zoom in there, it pretty much capped it. If you flick it to a line chart, pretty much bounced right off it and come back down. So interesting action there. We did have that false breakout just there on that candle. Then we closed below, but we're now below this moving average. So it'd be very interesting to see the weekly candlestick close this week. No, it's a very tricky week getting into this week. I can't really call a bias in terms of the weekly. I mean, purely the upper wick is kind of tricking me out in terms of if you just want to pick a bias in terms of purely on the candles. I'd probably say that the bias is downwards towards this week, but a lot of people would obviously disagree because last week's candle was bullish engulfing, so very tricky. Also we have a downtrend resistance on this weekly chart, which would kind of coincide with that and add further strength to the argument that we should have some sort of bearish week going into this week. But if you flick it to the daily, we've had a nice bounce off this 200-day moving average, and that's what we saw last week. Pretty much had what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 consecutive daily candles in a row. But you can now see it's much clearer actually in this daily chart that are starting to have a sell-off. We've bounced off of that trend line. You can see there clearly on the daily these spikes above this trend line resistance, and it's really capping the euro dollar pair. So no, interesting chart euro dollar. I mean, in terms of a week, well, in terms of this daily chart, let's just go down the time frames. It's the easiest thing to do. I mean, we've looked on the weekly and we say the bias is pretty much bearish if you're looking at a pure 1 week perspective, I'd say. And on this daily, it's looking like it wants to sell off as well. But I mean, if we do get a significant sell off for the next few days, then keep an eye out on this 200-day moving average as the key support I'd look at. And the next key support, if you want to look at fibs, would be, let's flip it to a 4-hour chart, I just want to zoom in on this recent sort of dip. Would be, if you drew a fib from the lows to the highs here, I'd keep an eye out on 50%. But you can also see on this 4-hour, this 100 bar moving average is starting to support as well. So in terms of today, I'd definitely be keeping an eye out on that 100 bar moving average for any sort of support. We could get a nice reversal candlestick off there as well. And also, to zoom in a bit on this one, this sort of fib move that we've got here, if you draw, you've got a nice sort of trend line support. Well, if we bring it from the outside, then we've actually technically broken that trend line support now. So I think we posted this on Twitter actually. This is one I was posted this morning. Just neaten that up a bit. Yeah, we have had a 1-hour candle. Well, we are actually below this trend line now, but we still could close inside it. So, in terms of definitely sort of week's price action, today is a very important day in my opinion in terms of this sort of trend line. How is it going to close? I mean, the 100 hour moving averages coincide in there, and the 100 bar moving average on the 4 hour. So 100 SMA is key on the 1 and 4 hour here, so keep an eye out on that. But in terms of the longer term specs, in terms of the whole of the week, it does look bearish, but we could easily pop up. So very tricky to call really on the euro-dollar chart, but it's still an interesting chart. Very technical. And you could see last week we were speaking about this fib from lows to highs here, and how we got that lovely 50% bounce, and it's now ripped all the way up to the upside. And you could say a similar sort of thing here. If you go for the recent dip off this trend line, lows to highs, let's just get rid of this fib here. Lows to highs, we're sitting around the sort of 50% and 61.8, so you could keep that on your chart as well. Yeah, I wouldn't use that fib unless we get any sort of further stuff. I'll keep this one on here. So yeah, I'd keep an eye on the 1 hour and 4 hour chart definitely today in terms of the price action. Let's flip it to the cable chart. In terms of the weekly, let's zoom back out. In terms of the weekly, all about the trendline support there, you have to keep that in mind, and the trendline resistance on here. It's still playing inside of that zone. In terms of what happened last week, a nothing much candle really, pretty much a doji. The upper wick is slightly higher than the lower wick though, so it looks like it is wanted to continue to sell off. I mean, we did say last week that, well, the last couple of weeks we have been saying that euro and cable have both been due a retracement, because we had what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weekly candlesticks in a row to the upside. The odds were for some sort of retracement. And so I remember saying this weekly chart last week in last week's video, that keeping up on this 100-week moving average, it looks like it's going to want to come down and test that. So, but obviously that's, I mean, we're talking about sort of next sort of 3-4 weeks. In terms of a shorter term perspective, we'll have to look at the shorter term charts. But in terms of this weekly chart, that is what I'd be focused on. It looks like it wants to come down and test that. And you can also see here, if you draw another trend line from those highs there, we've got 3 sort of clear highs. That trend line resistance is still intact. So in terms of the weekly, it looks like it wants to come down and test that 100-week moving average. Let's flip it to the shorter term time frames. In terms of the daily, all I'd really be focused on is this 55-day moving average. Looks like it wants to come down and test that and continuous retracement to the downside. Do we really have any trendline supports? Nothing much. I mean, we've pretty much broken them. Yeah, I mean that's the clear trendline support there, and that has officially been broken in my opinion. We had that daily candlestick closed there, and it hasn't really been reacting too well to it around here, so I'd have that off there. Let's have a look at the shorter term ones. Shorter term time frame. You can see we have trendline resistance there. Well, this is pretty much a channel. It's playing inside this channel, and the channel support there. So in terms of a shorter term time frame, the sort of 1 and 4 hour, it's all about this channel in my opinion. Zoom out there. Let's go back to the 4 hour. Looks like it's playing out in there. So the next one it could come down to is the 200 bar moving average, which will kind of coincide with this channel support. We could pop back up. But no, tricky chart, similar to Euro really. I mean, the last few weeks were much sort of simpler to call in terms of a weekly perspective, but the technicals are still there. This is how I'd set up my charts for this week really, but it looks like it's just going to continue inside this channel, and we spoke about that weekly. It definitely looks like it wants to keep on retracing, and the daily here has still got a long way away from the moving averages here, so I wouldn't be surprised if we've continued inside this downtrend channel in the 4 hour. Dollar Swiss weekly chart, nothing much really. Last sort of few weeks been pretty choppy, not very technical. It's all about this 55-week moving average, looking like it wants to pop above that. I mean, as we've been speaking about the last sort of few months, it's been a mirror image chart from Euro Dollar, this Dollar Swiss. So on Euro Dollar on the weekly, with that 55-week moving average acting as resistance, and surprise surprise on Dollar Swiss with the 55-week moving average acting as support. In terms of the daily, in terms of this daily chart, we have trendline support there, and we have trendline resistance there. So that's how I'd keep my daily chart set up, still inside of these two key support and resistance levels. And if we get a bounce up, then I'd keep an eye on that 200-day moving average. Yeah, nothing massively interesting in terms of shorter term charts. A 4-hour chart, we've got this 100 bar moving average capping to see how that plays out. Any sort of dip buyers you could draw if you want to be buying this pair. Then you could draw the 1-hour chart, fib from low to high. If we get any sell-off, then have a look at the 50% or the 61.8 for any sort of reversal. Aussie on the weekly. Just zoom in a bit. We have trendline resistance, which is still keeping intact. We can see last week's candle, very bearish candle. We also got a confirmation with the close of the 55-week moving average. So symmetry in euro and cable is looking like it is want to continue to sell off in terms of the candlestick patterns, but we have had 3 weekly candlesticks, 3 bearish weekly candlesticks in a row on Aussie dollar. So be prepared if we do get a bounce. Also, you draw a fib from lows to the highs there. We are quite near this 50% fib as well. That also coincided with that recent support around there, that candlestick there to the pip there. So pretty much a confident zone. If we do get any further sell off, then keep an eye out on that for any sort of dip buying opportunities. We also have a trend line support as well. Keep that in mind. Sort of triangular formation playing out here. In terms of shorter term perspective, nothing really of interest for me in this chart, or still that 50% if we come down. The reason I've got an eye on this 50% is because it's a previous support around here, so a nice confluence zone. I mean, the previous support that has been broken would have to be this one. We did get a daily candlestick close below that previous support, and we are below the moving averages as well, but no, nothing massively interesting on this Aussie dollar chart. More interesting charts in my opinion. So let's have a flick to the gold chart now. Gold on the weekly, trendline support we've still got there, and we're just getting a really nice pop up here. I mean, we've had the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weekly candlesticks in a row. We really have had a nice rip towards the upside, but we said last week's video, keep an eye out on this sort of 15, I think it was 1580s resistance, which is the previous high around it to the left. You can see we are starting to stall a bit. Last 3 weeks candles have pretty much been sideways action, no real momentum here, a lot of indecision in the market. So I would not be surprised to see if we got a sell-off this week in gold, and just, well, I mean, not really a sell-off, just a sort of general retracement, because we have had a lot of strength here towards the upside. So what I'd keep an eye out on here is the 55-week moving average and the trendline support as well. That's what I'd really focus on, because it does look like it's really due a retracement here. If you look at all time frames, I mean, 4 hour here, this looks like it could be a fib setup here from the lows. Yeah, from the lows to the highs there. On the 4 hour, we've got a clean 50% bounce, and it is starting to reverse quite nicely. So maybe the buyers are still in the market and want to keep on squeezing towards the upside. But I mean, in terms of longer term time frame, I'd want to see those highs breaking out this week really. The weekly candlestick is really close. That 1580s is the real key on that weekly. But I mean, in terms of the short term time frame, if you want to look for a sort of weekly perspective, then I suppose you could say the bias is towards the upside with this fib move. So it is a very technical fib move indeed, really for me there. But you can see that 100 bar moving average as well is starting to cap the pair. We need to get a clear candlestick above that on this 4 hour chart, in my opinion. Okay, that's done for the charts. Let's have a look at the Forex calendar for the week. Today we have Eurogroup meetings, so there's not a lot of economic data out here. Just keep an eye out for any news out on the wires out of those Eurogroup meetings. We have some mid-tier data out today, some German industrial production, that's out at 11 o'clock. But no high impact news today, unless you trade Kiwi, that's out at 10 PM. Tuesday, Tomorrow we have ECB President Draghi speaking at 8:30 AM. We have UK manufacturing production numbers month-on-month forecast at -0.6%, previously is 3.2. On Wednesday we have some Swissy data out at 5 AM, and we have S&P Chairman Jordan speaking, so it'll be interesting to see what he says about the 120 peg. We haven't heard from him in a while. Thursday, the main high impact news will be focused on this 130 US trade balance figures, and we have the weekly jobless claims. And Friday we have US PPI data out at 130, month-on-month forecast at 0.8% from previous 1.7%, so we're expecting a big drop in that number there. At 2:55 PM, preliminary University of Michigan consumer sentiment forecast at 77.9 from the previous 78.3, so a very, very quiet week in terms of economic data this week, but it doesn't surprise me because last week was very, very busy. It's always the way really when you have a busy week. One week it's very quiet the next week, so nothing much in terms of the economic data, but don't be surprised if we have any interesting news out on the wires from Greece or Spain. But it doesn't mean, because the news is quite well in terms of economic data will be quiet this week, it doesn't mean that the charts, it doesn't mean that there won't be any volatility. Normally in weeks like this the technicals normally come into play, so there'll still be plenty of opportunities in the market to make plenty of pips. Okay, and that's done for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and have a great week trading, and I'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.